Hello, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. I am here today with an agenda of just kind of chatting with you about some books that I've read recently and responding to a couple of videos that I've seen and what else? Yeah. It's okay, so that's my plan. I want to talk about what I've recently read, and I want to address a couple of videos that I have seen, and I have a response, and then maybe what my reading plans are from here and how I have abandoned my 20-book summer reading list because it's not feasible, and I just want to change direction. And I am back in my loft. I am so happy. We put all the boxes away that were just stacked up on this table because of the basement situation that is now completely resolved. All the books, all of my husband's knickknacks and doodads and everything that were just had exploded throughout the house are all back downstairs on his shelves with a carpet. And I'm hoping that I never again have to dismantle that basement again and then reassemble it. So knock on wood that is exactly what happens. So I'm back in my loft where I can sit and try and make this video. So, okay. The first thing I want to address is Angelia from Read and Reread. And if you're not watching Angelia, you are missing out on such an energetic and happy booktuber. You've got to watch her videos. She is very dedicated to doing at least weekly wrap-ups, and she does tags. And then she started this really fun series of like a Tuesday time machine kind of thing. Time warp. Now I can't remember exactly how she phrased it, but she had a journal she was keeping of books that she read. And so she's looking back on previous years and then just looking at the summer. She was seeing what she was reading in that summer and then just like chatting about it. I love these videos. They're so great. In her last video, which I will link below, she was talking about I don't remember what the context was, but she was talking about Rocky Horror and how she and her friends in high school would go see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And she showed this really good photograph of herself dressed up as Magenta. And then she asked if anybody else was like a Rocky Horror nerd. And I was one of those kids who occasionally went downtown Denver. We lived in the suburbs, but we would, trek into downtown Denver on Colfax Avenue, which is in all different types of businesses. There were a lot of things going on Colfax where we were, and then we went to this theater, and the show would show at midnight, and people would dress up. And I am kind of one of those people that don't know how to dress up for a specific thing. Like, I didn't dress up for a particular character in the movie, but I did dress up. And so I told Angelia I would post my picture here. And so right here, I'm going to post my snapshot. I think I was about 16. We were in Safeway, kind of right in front of the front windows where you can see the big signs behind us for Safeway. And that's how I dressed up. I call it, I think I had sweatpants on but then a white t-shirt and then a sparkly black shirt and then all this makeup. So that is what we did to dress up to go see Rocky Horror. And those were in the days when nobody cared what teenagers were doing. We were out at all hours of the night, driving around and having a lot of fun and not at home in bed where we probably should have been. Okay, so that was my retro photo, and that was really fun. Another thing I wanted to address was Renee at Left-Handed Reader was talking about rereading, and this has been going around BookTube quite a bit, as asking people if they like to reread books and what their rereading habits are. And often I think for myself, I wish I were doing nothing but rereading sometimes. I don't feel like I reread enough or I have enough opportunity because I have other plans with people, and I have 2 book clubs. That takes up a lot of my reading time. It absorbs a lot of my reading time. So I often wish I were rereading more. And Clementine, So come here. Just the other day, I was on Goodreads, and someone had been reading Old Filth by Jane Gardam, which is probably in the top 3 of my all-time favorite books. And I have read that book 3 times, at least 3 times. And the last time I read it, I listened to the audiobook, which was excellent. Then today I was on my library website and I saw that there is an actual Kindle book of all 3 of the trilogy, and I have not dedicated myself to the other 2 books nearly as much as I have to the first. In fact, I don't think I read the 3rd one. So I think maybe in November I will treat myself to reading all 3 of those books. I love rereading. And what do I get out of rereading? I feel like it takes me into a mindset that obviously I enjoyed the first time I was there. Like, I have mentioned this before, but sometimes with certain authors, I feel like we have a mind meld. And when I'm in the book of these different authors, when I'm reading their books, I feel like, we were having this very intense conversation about the plot and character of whatever's happening in the book. And it goes back to when I was in college and I was an English major, and I was taking a course on different critical theory, which a lot of it I did not enjoy, but the theory of reader response theory was something that really spoke to me. And it kind of is boiled down to the fact that each reading experience is, specific to the reader, and the reader brings something different. Every reader brings something different to a text. Levels of experience, levels of life experience, levels of language. Reader response theory was something that really appealed to me, and I even brought it into my graduate school studies and my final project of just like, how does a reader respond to a text? And so rereading for me kind of replicates and maybe enhances every time I experience a text that I've had that level of engagement with. And so I love rereading. And sometimes it's just for pure pleasure. Usually it is. It's just I want that pleasure center hit in my brain from engaging with a text. So does that sound a little too esoteric? Maybe so, but that's kind of how I think about it. So I love rereading. Life After Life, I've read several times. Stone Diaries, Jane Gardam, Old Filth, I have read several times. And then, of course, like childhood favorites, I think I've read Jane Eyre 4 times. I've read Pride and Prejudice 3 or 4 times. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is a book that I've read continuously. I mean, I haven't read it probably in the last 10 years, but I read it multiple times from childhood through adulthood because I so resonated with the main character and her life experience and her family life, and the, being smart and but being looked down on by maybe teachers or other kids. And so I just felt like I was kind of her. Harriet the Spy is another book that I read a lot when I was a kid. Little House on the Prairie series, especially these Happy Golden Years, which is a book I probably have read more than any other book in my life. And I think that changed my expectations about when adulthood began, because I think Laura and Almanzo got married when she was 17. And I'm like, well, when you're 17, you're ready to get married, which was ridiculous. But I really felt something when I was rereading those books. So I think the ones from childhood are the ones that probably have the most effect on you as a reader through your life. So those are just some examples of books that I reread a lot. I haven't read a lot of those books in years, but if I were to pick them up, I think I'd fall right back into that role of who I was when I was reading them, and my critical eye might be closed. I don't know. Sometimes I'm afraid that if I reread these books, then something about me will change because I'm a different reader. So all that to say, yes, I love rereading, and I wish I could do it more. Okay, I've only read 2 books since the last time I did an update for you. The first one I want to talk about, and I talked about it a little bit while had just started it, is The Romantic by William Boyd. And this is a book that is, I'm just going to call it as it is. It's a very old-fashioned narrative. It breaks no new ground in terms of character. Like, it's just a very traditional, I would say, English novel. Now, William Boyd is, I think he was born in Australia, but he was raised in Africa. So, but he has that very, to me, very British or very European mindset. And the book, The Romantic, is about a character named Cashel Ross, who's born in 1800, and it's essentially the story of his life from beginning to end. It's one of those whole life novels, but it was so fun. It was a rollicking story about his life. You never knew what the next chapter was going to bring, because he went from being first a boy, figuring out that he has a questionable parentage, being angry at his caretaker, and then running off to join the army, and then ends up in the Battle of Waterloo, of all things. And that experience of being in that battle kind of sets him for life, because everyone is incredibly impressed that he was a veteran of the Battle of Waterloo. And that follows him throughout his life. But we see him go from many different professions as he is experiencing all of Europe, and at times going to the United States, and then even into South America. And the title of the book, The Romantic, it's just more about his state of mind, because he actually spends time with Mary Shelley and Percy and Lord Byron. And so, they were romantics in the capital R sense of the word, and that influenced this character and his time with them as well. And he's very young when he's with them. And this is all fiction. It's the construct of the novel is that William Boyd, the author, has been given a packet of papers and journal entries and diaries and other documentation about Cashel Ross's life. And so he takes this bundle, and he knows it's an interesting life, and he decides he's going to create a novel out of it. So, at the beginning, I was thinking, wow, this guy has lived such an interesting life. But of course, it dawns on me not too long into the book that, of course, that was just part of the narrative structure, that this person never really existed. So it took me a little bit of time, though, to make that connection. So I felt kind of dumb, because I was thinking, wow, this guy was amazing. But anyway, I loved hearing about his life. I loved seeing all the different places he went, the crazy characters that he got embroiled in. And he had one love of his life that affected every single relationship. He's always looking for this woman in the faces of the women that he encounters afterward. And so it's just all about his relationships and all about his life. As I said, it really doesn't break any ground. It doesn't explore issues much. There is colonialism. There are definitely critiques of the society, but they aren't like blatant. So I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, but I know that it could garner a lot of criticism for just being a traditional, straightforward storytelling novel. The other book that I finished was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I think I mentioned in my last video that I hadn't planned on reading this, and in fact was just not going to read it. And then my book club decided we would read it, and I'm like kind of reluctantly going into it, and I loved it. I was wrong. The voice of Demon, the main character, is as nuanced and maybe even more so than the voice of David Copperfield in Dickens' novel. I really enjoyed seeing what happened to this orphan, essentially. And, you know, someone asked, I think I was watching a TikTok about this, and somebody asked in the comments, did you need to read David Copperfield in order to enjoy or understand this novel? And my answer in the comments was no, you didn't. It's fun to see the parallels. I could definitely remember enough from the Dickens novel to see what the parallels for the characters were and kind of anticipate what was going to happen based on that. But it's not necessary. It stands on its own. It's the tale of Appalachia and the opioid crisis and what happens to people in very marginalized communities in the rural South, in those mountain communities. But the ties between families and the love that the characters had for each other in many ways was just very strong, and I felt like I knew him inside and out from his remarkable narrative voice, and yeah, I loved it. So anything you've heard about this that makes you think you might want to try it, I would definitely give it a try. Not everyone loves it, I'm sure, but I was so happily surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, and then kind of have a book hangover now. I have books that I need to get started on for the next month, and I'm just not wanting to read right now because I read these two very remarkable single-focused novels back to back, and they were both really long, and I just feel drained in a sense from them. So I don't know. I have reading plans, obviously, for next month, but right now I'm just kind of taking a little hiatus from reading because of that experience. So yeah, I wanted to talk about my reading plans. I had this kind of list of tentative 20 books that I wanted to read this summer. I have read or will have read 12 of them by the end of September. And so I feel like that was a pretty good stab at my goals, and I've added more books to the list since then and removed books. A couple books I tried and didn't work for me off of that list. And so, yeah, next month I'm reading a book with Sean, the Book Maniac. We're reading another Edna O'Brien novel. We are reading the novels in chronological order, and this one is called Pagan Place. So that will be interesting to see what that's all about. And I'm reading something called The Lost Apothecary for book club. That's a book I probably wouldn't have chosen for myself, but I think it's short. I'm picking it up from the library. I have not been inside a library since before COVID, so I couldn't get the ebook, but I could get a physical copy, so I'm going to brave going to the library later on today and pick that up. And so those are the two obligations I know I have for August, and I might try and read my September book club book, which is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, and get that, you know, behind me as well. My main goal is that I would like to free up November so that I have zero obligations to any book club or any buddy reads or anything, and I can just read whatever I want in November and December. That's usually what I like to do, is like give those 2 months to myself as a present where anything goes. And I might just pick up those Jane Gardam novels in November as a gift to myself, and then also read some nonfiction and go from there. So that's my plan. I've been talking for 20 minutes now, but thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or you have opinions about anything I've said. And thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Thank you to new subscribers. I'm very glad to see you here, or know you're there. I guess I'm not seeing you, you're seeing me. And yeah, I'm going to sign off now, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.